My mother wanted a divorce, claiming it was to follow her heart's true calling. After a severe fever, my mother suddenly changed. Her gaze swept over the humble mud walls of our house, the bowl of bitter wild vegetable porridge on the table, and my father's rough, darkened hands calloused from a year of toil in the fields. All she saw was a profound disgust, as if she had been poisoned. Finally, her eyes landed on me, filled with a contemptuous impatience, as if I were nothing more than a piece of trash. "John Zhao," she declared, her voice as cold and sharp as winter, "let's get a divorce." My father's hand, clutching his bowl, trembled violently. The hot vegetable porridge spilled onto the back of his hand, but he didn't even notice the burn. His face was a canvas of shock and confusion. "Vivian," he stammered, "what are you saying? You've only just recovered." "I'm not speaking nonsense." Vivian Lin, my mother, snapped, cutting him off sharply. "I've had enough. 8 years of living with you, what kind of life has that been? I don't want to eat wild greens anymore, and I certainly don't want my daughter to end up like you, living a life with muddy feet and soiled hands." As she spoke, she shot a disdainful glance at me, as if I were the ugliest stain on her life. My father's face immediately flushed crimson. His lips moved, but no words came out for a long moment. As for me, a 6-year-old child with the soul of a 30-year-old, I merely lowered my head in silence, hiding the cold mockery in my eyes. I knew she wasn't thinking of me at all. She had just reawakened. She wanted to find her true love from her previous life, Officer Lee, the powerful military commander she knew he would soon become. My father and I were nothing more than burdens, disposable pawns on her path to a glorious future. Vivian Lin's demand for a divorce sent shockwaves through the entire Zhao family village. In those times, divorce was an earth-shattering event, especially when my mother was known as the most beautiful woman in the village. When she married my father, John Zhao, countless people envied his good fortune. Grandma Zhao, upon hearing the news, rushed over, pointing an accusing finger directly at Vivian Lin and unleashing a torrent of abuse. "Vivian Lin, you heartless vixen, what has my son ever done to you that wasn't good? Everything you wear, everything you have, my John scraped together every penny for it. He scrimped and saved just for you. Now you've had a fever and gone mad, and you want to abandon him? What schemes are you plotting?" Vivian Lin shed her usual submissive demeanor entirely. She crossed her arms defiantly, fixing Grandma Zhao with a cold stare. "Mother," she retorted, "you're wrong. Yes, John Zhao provided food and clothes, but what kind of clothes? Rough, patched-up rags. What kind of food? Dry, choking cornmeal cakes? I refuse to live like that anymore. Am I wrong to want more?" "You ungrateful wretch." Grandma Zhao trembled with fury. My father quickly pulled Grandma Zhao back, his eyes red-rimmed as he looked at Vivian Lin, his voice pleading. "Vivian, please don't make a scene. Can't we just live peacefully together? I'll try harder. I promise I'll give you and Chloe a better life, a good life." Vivian Lin let out a bitter, hollow laugh. "Wait until you John Zhao, give me a good life? I'll be long dead by then. I'm telling you plainly, this marriage I will divorce." Her resolve was unyielding. All attempts at persuasion were useless. I knew she was determined. In my previous life, she had abandoned us just as cruelly. Back then, I was too young to understand, only able to cling to her leg and cry, begging her not to go. She had kicked me away without hesitation, never once looking back as she boarded the bus to the city. This time, I wouldn't cry. I tugged gently at my father's shirt. When he turned to look at me, I spoke in a calm, age-inappropriate voice. "Dad, just let Mom go." Everyone was stunned, even Vivian Lin. Perhaps she never imagined that the troublesome little tale from her previous life, who only knew how to wail and cling, could utter such words now. My father crouched down, stroking my head. His voice was hoarse. "Chloe, do you know what you're saying?" "I do, Dad," I said, looking him straight in the eyes, utterly serious. "Mom doesn't need us anymore. If you have to force someone to stay, their heart isn't here. We can't hold on to her." My words struck my father like a bolt of lightning, piercing his heart. He looked at me, then at Vivian Lin's cold, indifferent face, and finally let his tightly clenched hand fall limp. The flame of life in his eyes flickered out. The divorce proceedings were quickly brought before the commune committee. The kind-hearted village chief tried his best to persuade her, arguing reasonably for the entire session, but Vivian Lin remained unswayed. In front of everyone, she declared boldly, "John Zhao is incompetent. He cannot give me the life I desire. It's as simple as that." My father's face alternated between pale and flushed, his hands clenched so tightly they trembled. Yet, from beginning to end, he remained silent, not uttering a single word of rebuttal. I understood his heart was deeply wounded. Vivian Lin wanted the divorce to happen as quickly as possible, even using me as a bargaining chip. "Leave the child with him. I don't need anything else. I'll leave with nothing but the clothes on my back." Even the village chief was appalled by these words. He frowned and said, "Daughter-in-law of John Zhao's family, you cannot say such a thing. Chloe is your own flesh and blood." "So what?" Vivian Lin responded indifferently. "She'll only suffer if she stays with him. I'm doing this for her own good. A quick pain is better than prolonged agony. Indeed, for my own good." She had said the exact same thing in my previous life. She quickly remarried Officer Lei, and to curry favor with his demanding mother, she publicly declared she had never been married, had no children, and was still pure. I had become a stain that needed to be erased from her life. My father stared at her, as if seeing the true person beneath the facade for the first time in their 8 years together. Finally, he gritted his teeth and uttered 2 words: "I agree." The divorce proceedings were shockingly swift. Vivian Lin got what she wanted, reclaiming the freedom she had always yearned for, without a single shred of regret. That very afternoon, she packed her few new clothes, ready to abandon the house she detested so fiercely. Before leaving, she came up to me, looking down. Perhaps she hoped to see pain and longing on my face to satisfy her pathetic vanity. But I met her gaze indifferently, my eyes unwavering. She frowned, clearly displeased. Then, from her pocket, she pulled out a few candies and pressed them into my hand with a condescending tone, as if bestowing a great favor. She said, "Chloe, Mom is going to the city to live a better life now. These candies are for you. Be a good girl and listen to your father, all right." These same candies, just like in my previous life. It was because of these candies that I was fooled, believing she would return. I foolishly waited at the village entrance for 3 days straight, only to end up with a life-threatening fever. Looking at the colorful candies in my palm, I suddenly burst out laughing. Right in front of her, I threw each candy into the pig's trough. "I don't need them," I said, looking straight into her astonished eyes, my voice clear and distinct. "Your things are dirty to me." Vivian Lin's face instantly went white. "You ungrateful little brat," she shrieked, raising her hand to hit me. My father stepped forward, gripping her wrist tightly, so forcefully that she cried out in pain. "Vivian Lin," my father's voice was icy, "you are no longer part of this family. You have no right to touch my daughter." He flung her hand away, carefully shielding me behind him. Vivian Lin stumbled backward, seeing the unfamiliar determination in my father's eyes, and then the cold indifference on my face. She finally realized this house held nothing left for her to regret or command. She stomped her foot in anger, turned swiftly, and walked away, her retreating figure resolute, without a single glance back. I knew she was headed to the post office in town. She wanted to send a letter to Officer Lei, who was stationed far away in the military, to let him know she was finally free. After Vivian Lin left, the house felt eerily cold and empty. Grandma Zhao, worried my father would fall into despair, visited our house 3 times a day, trying to cook delicious meals for us. The village gossip buzzed around me like annoying flies. Poor John Zhao, stuck with such a heartless wife. That Vivian Lin is truly ungrateful. You could tell she was never one to settle. The saddest is little Chloe, losing her mother so young. My father had visibly withered. During the day, he silently toiled in the fields. At night, he sat alone in the courtyard, smoking, sometimes staying up all night. I knew he needed time. I didn't disturb him. Instead, I began to plan for our future. Early 1978, a glorious new era was about to unfold. The Household Contract Responsibility System, a revolutionary agricultural reform, would soon be widely implemented. Alongside this came the establishment of special economic zones in the southern coastal regions. This was an age of opportunity, where even farmers, toiling in poverty year-round, could become millionaires if they seized the moment. In my previous life, my father had collapsed after Vivian Lin's departure, missing out on every opportunity, ultimately living a life of hardship and poverty. This time, I was determined not to let tragedy repeat itself, and opportunity arrived swiftly. One day, the village chief gathered all the villagers to announce a new policy from the higher-ups, the household production quota system. Each family would be allocated land to cultivate themselves, and after paying taxes to the state, the rest would be theirs. This news sent the entire village into an uproar. Most people were wary, finding it hard to believe. The land belongs to the collective. How can it be divided among individuals? Isn't this a step backward? What if the policy changes? My father, too, was hesitant and uncertain. He was accustomed to following directives. Being told to make his own decisions left him flustered. I took his hand, looked up, and said, "Dad, let's take on the contract." He was surprised. "Chloe," he said, "this is no laughing matter." "Dad, trust me," I tried to convey confidence in my voice. "If others don't dare, we will. We won't just contract our own land, but also the barren hill west of the village that no one wants." The barren hill to the west of the village had dry, rocky soil mixed with pebbles. Nothing could grow there. For generations, villagers had considered it wasteland. Everyone thought I was crazy. Even the village chief advised my father, "John, you must think carefully. If you contract that barren hill, you'll have to pay a fee every year. If nothing grows, what will you two eat?" My father looked at me, his eyes full of indecision. I knew exactly what he was thinking. I leaned close to his ear, whispering just loud enough for the two of us to hear. "Dad, do you remember that agricultural science and technology book you brought back from the county last year? The book said that this type of rocky soil is most suitable for growing apple trees. We'll lease that hill and plant apples." That magazine I had casually flipped through in my previous life detailed various economic crops suitable for different soil types. At the time, I'd only glanced at it. Who knew it would be so useful in this life? My father stared at me, dumbfounded, with an incredulous look. He surely remembered that magazine. It was a reference book he had forgone several meals to buy for me. How could a barely educated farmer like him understand agricultural science and technology? He looked at my resolute eyes, recalling my recent unusual behaviors. He was silent for a long time, so long I thought he would give up. Finally, he slapped his thigh decisively and said to the village chief, "Uncle, we'll take the contract. Our family's land, and the entire barren hill to the west I'll take it all." My father's decision led everyone in the Zhao family village to believe he had gone mad. Not only was he the first in the village to sign a contract, but he also invested all the meager savings Vivian Lin had left before she departed into a 30-year lease for the barren hill. John Zhao has gone crazy after losing his wife. What does a 6-year-old child know? He'll regret this bitterly later. Such gossip cut like knives. But this time, my father was utterly determined. He took me to reclaim the hill from dawn till dusk. The hill was full of rocks. We carried them away, one by one, father and daughter working together. With no saplings, my father ran dozens of kilometers to the county nursery to buy them. During that time, he visibly thinned, but his eyes grew brighter, as if he had found a new belief. I was not idle either. I used my small body to help my father as much as I could, carrying water, bringing meals. When he was tired, I told him stories I'd read in books. They were actually business insights and opportunities I knew from my previous life. For instance, I knew that in a few years, the entire country would face a major drought, and our village river would be the only water source in the region that wouldn't dry up. "Dad," I told him, "we must dig a large pond at the foot of the hill and channel the river water into it. Otherwise, when the drought comes, our fruit trees will die of thirst." I explained it to my father, who, though he didn't quite understand, trusted me implicitly. He gritted his teeth and endured, spending over a month digging a large reservoir at the foot of the hill. This action once again drew ridicule and mockery from the villagers, yet we paid no attention to their words. Life continued in this way, filled with hard work and hope. A few months later, a letter from Vivian Lin finally arrived. However, it wasn't addressed to us but to her mother's home. Her younger brother, Quinlin, brought it to my father, his face beaming with triumphant boastfulness. It was a photograph of Vivian Lin and Officer Lee. In the picture, Vivian Lin wore a fashionable dress, her curly hair elegantly styled, as she gracefully leaned against a man in military uniform. That man was none other than Officer Lee. He was tall, handsome, with a smooth, refined face truly superior to my father in every aspect. "See," Quinlin bragged, "my sister is now the commander's wife. She lives in a huge apartment complex, eats standard rations, and even gets chauffeured around in a car. He then turned to my father, gloating, "John Zhao, you regret it now, don't you? If you had treated my sister a little better back then, you would be the one enjoying this luxurious life." My father stared at the photograph, his face deathly pale, his hand clutching the letter trembling. I stepped forward, snatched the photo from his hand, glanced at it, and then, right in front of Quinlin, tore it into tiny pieces. "What are you doing?" Quinlin cried out in alarm, lunging to snatch it back. I gave him a cold stare. "She has nothing to do with us anymore. Her things and you are not welcome in this house. Don't ever come back." Quinlin was rendered speechless by a child like me, pointing at me and muttering, "You bastard child," before slinking away. I turned to my father and found him staring at me, his eyes filled with complex emotions. He walked over, took my hand. "Do you regret it, Dad?" I asked. He was silent for a long moment, then slowly shook his head, squeezing my hand tightly. "No regrets. Having Chloe is enough." In that moment, I knew my father had completely let go. Vivian Lin and her dream of becoming a commander's wife would never hurt him again. 3 years swiftly passed. Over those 3 years, our lives underwent immense transformation. The once barren hill which we contracted was now a lush, vibrant orchard. The first crop of apples had begun to bear fruit. Though not abundant, each apple was large and sweet, selling for a high price at the county market. My father followed my advice, not putting all our eggs in one basket. Besides growing apples, we also raised chickens and kept fish in the pond at the foot of the hill. Our family's life improved remarkably, starting with building the first brick house in the village, followed by buying the first black and white television. Those who once mocked my father now respectfully called him Brother John. Whenever they saw us, their words filled with admiration. Even the Lin family, who had previously scorned us, now started visiting our home regularly. "John," my greedy maternal grandmother brazenly said to my father, "Look, your life is prosperous now. Shouldn't you help your younger cousins on your wife's side?" Before my father could reply, I spoke up. "Grandma," I said, "when my mother left, the Lin family declared they had cut ties with our Zhao family. Now that our family is wealthy, you want to come and take advantage. How can things be so easy in this world?" My grandmother's face turned crimson with embarrassment. She pointed at me and cursed, "You little brat, just like your mother, both of you are ungrateful." My father's face darkened. He pushed them out of the house. "My daughter is right," he said. "Our family and the Lin family are no longer related. Please don't come back again." Rejected so bluntly, the Lin family, far from being reasonable, instead spread malicious rumors about us everywhere, claiming my father was ungrateful and that I, though young, had a wicked heart. But we completely ignored them, for we had more important things to do. In 1982, the terrible drought I remembered from my previous life struck, just as I knew it would. From early spring, not a single drop of rain fell. The river's water level gradually receded, and crops in the vast fields withered and died in large patches. The villagers were in agony, praying to the heavens day and night, but the sky remained unhearing. Thanks to our large water reservoir, our orchard remained stable. While other local fruit orchards withered from lack of water, our apple trees were laden with fruit, vibrant red and visually appealing. That year, the entire county suffered a devastating apple harvest, causing prices to skyrocket. Our apples became a highly sought-after commodity. Following my advice, my father didn't rush to sell them. Instead, he rented a cold storage facility to store the apples, waiting until the end of the year when prices were highest to release them to the market. By year-end, when we tallied everything, we had earned a whopping 50,000 yuan. 50,000 yuan? In the 80s, when the average monthly salary was only a few dozen yuan, this was an astronomical sum. My father held the savings passbook, his hands trembling. We became the first 10,000 yuan household, in the county the first asterisk 50,000 yuan household. The county newspaper even featured us in an exclusive interview with the headline, "Farmers get rich through science and technology, turning wasteland into a gold mine." My father and I became famous throughout the region. It was at this very time that Vivian Lin returned. She arrived in a gleaming black car, which pulled up at the entrance of the village, drawing the attention of everyone. She stepped out, clad in a beige wool coat, polished leather shoes, her hair styled in bouncy curls, and her face meticulously made up. She looked like an urban lady straight out of a painting, utterly out of place in our poor, backward mountain village. Following her was Officer Lee, still in his neat military uniform, though the star on his shoulder now denoted a higher rank than 3 years prior. They had returned to visit her maternal relatives. Vivian Lin's family surrounded them like stars around the moon, their lips stretched in fawning smiles. Oh, our Vivian truly has a bright future. She's already a commander's wife. Officer Lee is so young and talented, with an extraordinary presence. Vivian Lin basked in these praises, her mouth uttering humble words while her chin tilted high, like a proud peacock. She walked through the crowd, her eyes scanning the village as if searching for something. When she spotted our imposing 2-story house, the smile on her face abruptly vanished. "Whose house is that?" she asked Quinlin, who was standing beside her. Quinlin curled his lip, reluctantly replying, "John Zhao's." Vivian Lin's face immediately turned unsightly, her expression one of utter disbelief. Perhaps she had never imagined that the gentle husband she had abandoned, the country bumpkin in her eyes, could build such a magnificent house in just 3 short years. Her return this time was originally meant to flaunt her current luxurious life and to witness the struggles of my father and me. She believed we would be living in destitution and extreme poverty. At that point, she would be in the position of the victor, bestowing upon us a bit of false pity to appear magnanimous, but the reality struck her a powerful blow. Not only were we not living in hardship, but we had a better life than anyone else in the village. How could she possibly accept this? Unconvinced, she led her entourage straight to our doorstep. At that moment, my father was in the courtyard, showcasing our advanced irrigation system to a television crew, the very large pond that everyone in the village had mocked for 3 years. When he saw Vivian Lin, the smile on my father's face faded, but he showed no obvious emotion. "What brings you here?" my father asked, his tone indifferent. Vivian Lin looked at our spacious and airy courtyard, then at my father's neat and clean clothes. Envy surged within her. She forced a smile. "John, I've come to visit. I heard you're doing very well these days, a wealthy household, even in the newspapers." "It's all thanks to your blessing," my father replied curtly. Perhaps Officer Lee sensed the awkward atmosphere, so he proactively extended his hand and said to my father, "You must be John Zhao? Hello, I am Commander Lee." My father merely glanced at him, not shaking his hand but just nodding. Commander Lee's hand hung awkwardly in the air. Vivian Lin's expression grew even more unpleasant. She pulled Officer Lee's hand away, then looked at me, her tone somewhat fawning. "Chloe is so big now. Do you recognize Mom?" I was sitting on a small chair doing my homework. Hearing her, I looked up and gave her an innocent, naive smile. "I recognize you, ma'am. Aren't you the woman who abandoned her own daughter just to marry a higher-ranking official?" My voice was perfectly clear and distinct. Everyone could hear it. The television reporters, utterly thrilled, immediately turned their cameras towards us. Vivian Lin's face turned ashen. "You, what nonsense are you spouting?" Vivian Lin was furious and flustered, her voice trembling. Officer Lee's expression also became grave. Clearly, he hadn't anticipated encountering such a situation. I tilted my head, my face innocent, and asked her, "I'm not making things up. Didn't you say exactly that 3 years ago when you left? You said that my dad and I were poor, that I was a burden, and if you stayed with Dad, I wouldn't have a future. So you had to go to the city to find a higher-ranking official for a better life." I paused, then shifted my gaze to Officer Lee and asked in a clear voice, "Uncle, are you that higher-ranking official?" Officer Lee's eye twitched, his expression utterly unique. The villagers and reporters began to whisper amongst themselves, their gazes at Vivian Lin filled with contempt and suspicion. So, she abandoned her husband and child for wealth. Who knew someone who looked so respectable could have such a dark heart? This is certainly big news, the unknown past of the commander's wife. Vivian Lin screamed at me, agitated by the whispers. "Chloe Zhao, you little wretch, you're lying, I didn't." "Vivian Lin," my father roared, his anger a protective shield in front of me, his eyes cold as blades. "Try slandering my daughter one more time." My father was a lifelong farmer, tall and robust, and when he was enraged, his presence was so formidable that even Officer Lee instinctively took a half-step back. Vivian Lin was terrified by my father's aura. Her lips trembled, but she dared not utter another word. Officer Lee's face grew incredibly sullen. His return with Vivian Lin this time had two purposes. One, to visit relatives as usual, and two, he wanted to leverage his commander's wife status to return home in glory and earn some respect. But now, not only had he failed to gain respect, but he was on the verge of having his truth exposed. Forcing down his anger, he told Vivian Lin, "Vivian, let's go." Vivian Lin still wouldn't give up. She wanted to explain, to salvage her image. But Officer Lee had lost all patience. He grabbed Vivian Lin's hand tightly, almost dragging her out of our house. The gleaming black car that had arrived with such pomp now looked equally pathetic. This absurd drama concluded just like that. The television reporters who had originally intended to interview me were skillfully turned away by my father. My father sat down, caressed my head, and asked gently, "Chloe, are you scared?" I shook my head, hugging his neck. "No, Dad, I'm fine. I just didn't want her to bully you anymore." My father's eyes welled up. He hugged me tightly, his voice choked with emotion. "My good girl, it's because Dad is useless." "No." I declared firmly, "Dad is the best person in the world." We looked at each other and smiled, everything understood unspoken. From that day forward, our family completely cut ties with Vivian Lin. This glorious homecoming of Vivian Lin and Officer Lee had truly turned into a farce. The scandal of the official's wife abandoning her husband and child quickly spread throughout the region. Rumor had it that Officer Lee was thoroughly embarrassed among his rural relatives and had a loud argument with Vivian Lin on the way back. As for Vivian Lin, she completely became a negative example in everyone's eyes here. But none of that concerned us anymore. After securing our initial capital, my father, following my suggestions, opened a small fruit processing plant. We didn't just sell fresh apples, we also utilized less attractive fruits to make jams, syrups, and juices. I applied a few classic recipes from my previous life's memories, resulting in delicious and appealing products. As soon as they hit the market, our products were enthusiastically received. Orders poured in like a flood, and our small production facility quickly couldn't keep up. My father decided to expand production, hiring dozens of idle villagers. This not only created jobs for our community, but also boosted the economic development of the entire village. From a poor rural village, Zhao Family Village rose to become a renowned wealthy village. My father, from being an ordinary fruit farmer, became Director Zhao, respected by everyone. He was no longer the quiet, overlooked farmer. He donned suits, learned to read financial reports, and mastered interacting with all sorts of people. His entire being was transformed, exuding a confident demeanor. Time flew by, another 5 years passed. With the top scores in the entire county, I was admitted to the province's leading key high school. My father's factory had also developed into a prominent leading enterprise in the city. The Zhao Family Orchard brand became famous throughout the province. We bought a house in the provincial city. My father entrusted the factory's management to a trustworthy deputy director, while he himself moved to the city with me for my studies. Our lives became increasingly prosperous. As for Vivian Lin, occasionally I would hear news from the Lin family relatives who still harbored delusions of rekindling their relationship with us. Apparently, her life was far from easy. Officer Lee's mother was an incredibly arrogant and formidable old woman who utterly despised a daughter-in-law of humble origins and a divorcee like Vivian Lin. After Vivian Lin became a daughter-in-law, she couldn't bear children, further destabilizing her position in the Lee family. Officer Lee's sisters-in-law were no less difficult, openly and subtly creating problems and suppressing her. The title of commander's wife sounded grand, but in reality, she suffered more than a servant. She wasn't allowed to have her own job, her own friends. Her entire day revolved around Officer Lee and the extended Lee family, constantly enduring scrutiny and contempt from her mother-in-law and sisters-in-law. In my previous life, I had no idea about these things. It was only much later that I knew she lived the life of a wealthy person. However, I had no idea that behind that splendid facade lay such a tangled mess of troubles. Could this be considered some form of retribution? I'm not sure. I only knew that while we walked freely in the daylight, she was trapped in the gilded cage she had chosen, slowly withering away. In my 11th grade, I represented my school in the Provincial Physics Olympiad. At the competition venue, I unexpectedly encountered Vivian Lin again. She wasn't participating in the event herself, but was accompanying Officer Lee's mother, her mother-in-law, as a family member to cheer on her niece. She looked significantly thinner than she had a few years ago. Although still neatly dressed, the deep-seated fatigue and dissatisfaction etched between her eyebrows were things even heavy makeup couldn't conceal. She was carefully massaging the back of the elderly woman sitting next to her, who, in turn, was complacently enjoying it. The older woman's gaze was fixed on a little girl in a princess dress on stage, her face radiating pride and love. That child was likely Officer Lee's brother's daughter. I merely glanced, then quickly turned away. I thought there would be no connection left between us. But as soon as the competition ended, just as I was stepping out of the hall, she blocked my way. "Chloe," she looked at me, her eyes filled with a complex mix of surprise, envy, and an emotion I couldn't quite name. I had grown into a beautiful young woman, nearly as tall as she was, my face no longer having its childish roundness, but bearing features reminiscent of my father, yet also carrying a certain coldness. "Is there something you need, Mrs. Lin?" I asked coldly. This form of address stunned her. Immediately afterward, a bitter expression appeared on her face. "Chloe, are you still blaming Mom?" I looked at her as if watching a ridiculous play. "Blame you? Why should I blame you? On the contrary, I should thank you. If it weren't for your abandonment that year, my father and I wouldn't have the wonderful life we have today." My words pierced her heart like sharp needles. Her face immediately turned white, her lips trembling. "Child, how can you say that? After all, we share the same blood, we're mother and daughter." I let out a faint chuckle. A mother who, for personal gain, can heartlessly abandon her child? Sorry, I don't have such a mother. My mother passed away when I was 6. She was so angry she trembled, her eyes welling up, trying to appear pathetic. This tactic might have worked on my father, but it was useless on me. "If you have nothing else, I'll take my leave. My father is waiting for me to have dinner." With that, I turned to walk away. "Wait," she suddenly grabbed my hand, her voice a mixture of urgency and pleading. "Chloe, help me, tell your father, ask him to find me a job." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What did you just say?" I asked. "I'm not comfortable in the Lee family home." She lowered her head, her voice choked. "My mother-in-law, she always dislikes me, and Officer Lee, he's become increasingly cold towards me lately. I want to work, I want to earn my own living, but they won't allow it. Chloe, I know your father has status now. Can you please ask him to help me? If your father speaks up, the Lee family will surely agree." I looked at her, feeling both amusement and pity. This woman, who once heartlessly discarded us for a so-called luxurious life, now wanted to return to us when that luxurious life didn't live up to her expectations. What did she take us for? A dog she could call and chase away? Or scrap metal that could be reused at any time? "Mrs. Lin," I said, prying her fingers off one by one, my gaze icy, "have you forgot? We have nothing to do with each other anymore. Everything my father has achieved today, he built with his own 2 hands, and it has nothing to do with you, not a single penny. You want a job, you want independence, that's your business. Just don't come looking for us." I looked at her from head to toe. "And take that pathetic act somewhere else. I find it disgusting." With those words, I turned and walked away without looking back. Her choked sobs echoed behind me, but my heart remained unmoved. The pitiful often have something to be blamed for. What she had today was the result of her own choices. No one else was to blame. I thought after that encounter, Vivian Lin would give up completely. It turned out I had underestimated her shamelessness and greed. Just a few days later, she showed up at my father's company. At that time, my father was busy in an important meeting, discussing product development plans for the next quarter. Oblivious to this, Vivian Lin stormed straight into the meeting room. She was even more disheveled than last time, without makeup, her eyes swollen, looking like a pathetic little white flower that had been wronged. "John," she cried, running towards my father as soon as she entered. My father instinctively dodged, causing her to stumble and nearly fall. The entire meeting room was stunned. "Vivian Lin, what are you doing here?" My father frowned, clearly annoyed. "John, please help me." Vivian Lin ignored the stares of those around her, sobbing piteously. "I truly can't live in the Lee family anymore. They all oppress me. And Officer Lee, he has another woman outside." Upon hearing this, the entire meeting room immediately buzzed with whispers. My father's expression also changed. "This is your private matter. It has nothing to do with me." "No, it does." Vivian Lin clung desperately to his hand, as if to a final lifeline. "John, I know you still care about me, don't you? Let's, let's remarry. With Chloe, our family of 3 can start anew, can't we? You're insane. My father looked at her with utter disbelief, roughly shaking her hand off. Vivian Lynn, do you have any self-respect left? I don't need self-respect anymore, she screamed, utterly disregarding everything. I only need you, John. I know I made a mistake. I truly did. That year I was possessed. I shouldn't have abandoned you and Chloe. Please give me another chance, won't you? As she spoke, she tugged at my father's shirt, her demeanor utterly debased. Several senior managers of the company, unable to watch any longer, started to move forward to pull her away. Just then, the meeting room door was pushed open again. Officer Lee entered, his face ashen, flanked by 2 bodyguards. Behind him was his stern-faced, elderly mother. Vivian Lynn, what kind of scene are you causing here? Officer Lee roared, struggling to control his rage. The elder Mrs. Lee immediately lunged forward, pointing a finger directly at Vivian Lynn's face and cursing her. You shameless woman, you've completely disgraced the Lee family. You can't even bear children, yet you dare to secretly try to seduce your ex-husband. Today I'll teach you a lesson. As she spoke, she swung her hand, intending to slap Vivian Lynn. Vivian Lynn screamed, trying to dodge, and the scene became utterly chaotic. Reporters, having caught wind of the commotion, rushed in with their cameras and lenses, continuously snapping pictures of this dramatic moment. Under the dazzling camera flashes, Vivian Lynn's face was as white as paper, Officer Lee's face was gray as lead, and the elder Mrs. Lee was fierce as a demon. My father stood impassively to one side, like an outsider, observing the play Vivian Lynn herself had orchestrated finally coming to an end. This ridiculous spectacle finally concluded when Officer Lee forcibly took Vivian Lynn and his mother away. But the aftermath it left behind would linger for a long time. The very next day, major provincial newspapers' social media pages were filled with sensational headlines. Famous entrepreneur harassed by ex-wife at company, suspected staged reunion. Commander's wife cheats in marriage, why still entangled with ex-husband. A barrage of baseless speculation and harsh comments immediately spread widely. The Lee family's reputation had been utterly tarnished by Vivian Lynn. I heard that Officer Lee's superiors had called him in for a reprimand, negatively impacting his political career. The Lee family certainly couldn't tolerate such a disgrace. Not long after, I heard they divorced. Vivian Lynn left with nothing, expelled from the high-class apartment complex she had always dreamed of. She had strived her entire life, using every possible trick and scheme to achieve everything, only for it all to vanish into thin air overnight. She came to my father several more times, crying miserably, begging, pleading, even kneeling. But this time, she wasn't even allowed to step through our threshold. Perhaps later, when all hope was exhausted, she returned to Zhao family village, seeking refuge with her equally pragmatic maternal family. But upon seeing her lose the glamorous title of commander's wife and return as plain Vivian Lynn, with nothing to her name, the Lynn family's attitude changed completely. They mocked her, calling her shameful, a parasite, constantly ridiculing and disparaging her. Quinlan even tried to kick her out of the house to make room for a bride from the city, arranged by a matchmaker. In her previous life, she discarded us. In this life, she was abandoned by the entire world. The summer I graduated from high school, I received a call from the village chief. He informed me that Vivian Lynn had passed away. She was found in the river west of the village. It was unclear whether she had jumped in herself or simply slipped. My father listened to the phone in silence for a very long time. In the end, he still returned to the village to arrange her funeral. There was no funeral service, no mournful music, not even a single person from the Lynn family came to send her off. Only my father erected a small, unnamed grave for her. I stood on the hill, looking at the small earthen grave from a distance. My heart held no resentment nor sorrow, only a profound sense of peace. Vivian Lynn, the woman intertwined with my 2 lives, had finally in that way completely vanished from my existence. She was like a book that had reached its final page. The story was over, whether good or bad, it had been decided. She gained the true love she couldn't have in her previous life, but in doing so, she exchanged it for losing everything. Was it worth it in the end? Perhaps only she knew. After Vivian Lynn's funeral arrangements were settled, my father returned and fell gravely ill. After recovering, he seemed to have shed a 1,000-pound burden, his whole being lighter. He began to learn how to enjoy life. He went to the park to play chess with elderly men, enrolled in calligraphy classes at the university for seniors, and even took up dancing following TV programs. At one of these dance gatherings, he met Ms. Chang. Ms. Chang was a retired dancer from the provincial song and dance troupe, with a gentle demeanor and a cheerful personality. She had lost her husband early to illness and raised her son alone until he grew up. They quickly found harmony and love together. I was a university student when they married. The wedding was a simple affair, with only a few close friends invited. Seeing my father and Ms. Chang radiate happiness, I genuinely felt glad for my father. This kind and strong man, who had endured so many hardships in his life, had finally found happiness. After graduating, I didn't inherit the family business but decided to study abroad. My father and Ms. Chang fully supported me. My father told me, "Chloe, just pursue your dreams. I'll take care of everything at home, and the company is also my responsibility. You don't need to worry about anything, just move forward boldly." I studied abroad for 5 years and earned my doctorate. After returning, I worked at a top research institute, pursuing the research career I was passionate about. My father's company, under his shrewd management, had grown into a powerful conglomerate. My father became one of the most successful private entrepreneurs of his era, and I, too, became a well-known young scientist in my specialized field. Both my father and I had achieved lives we never dared to dream of before. Sometimes, on quiet late nights, I would think of Vivian Lin. I remembered her beautiful face, etched with bitterness. I remembered her life, trying desperately to escape hardship, only to fall into another abyss. She was the protagonist of a transmigration story, yet she met a tragic end. If only she hadn't been reborn, if only she had been content to live an ordinary life beside my father, perhaps she could have waited for the changes of the era, waited for the day our family became wealthy. By then, she would have been a respected director's wife, with a successful husband and a daughter with a bright future. She wouldn't have had to strive, she would have had everything she desired. But there are no ifs. She allowed her so-called foreknowledge of the future to blind her, personally sacrificing the happiness within her grasp to chase illusions. In the end, her illusions shattered, and she suffered a tragic fate. As for us, the ones she saw as disposable pawns and burdens, abandoned in an out-of-the-way place, we were now enjoying a vibrant and colorful life. Perhaps this was life's most ironic twist.